Let's have a talk today about survival gardening. See, as society is more and more difficult, our money becomes worth less and less. Our time and effort going into a system that very well could be collapsing in this generation. Do you have what it takes to be able to create a survival garden situation? Do you know what type of plant you need? Do you know when to plant it? You know how to get those plants? Do you already have them? Truthfully, do you have the skills to survive? Well, we're going to go over some of that. It's probably not what you think. Most people think gardening is simple. You just go down and you get some seeds and you plant them in the ground and you water them. Voila! Instant vegetables. It's not how it works. Gardening takes years of practice, diligent study. It's not an overnight thing. So people that's their game plan, maybe they already have a few seeds, they're doomed. They're not really going to be much better off than the people that think that the right way to prepare for this is to stockpile on large amounts of ammo. What you really need is to actually know what grows in your area, what does well, when to plant it, how to go about doing it, how to get fertility out of your soil, how to build that fertility up. These are things that a lot of people struggle with. I'm blessed to live in Florida. We have the worst soil that you can possibly imagine. It's beach sand. It has no nutrients. Nothing. It's a little bit difficult to plant what people would consider a traditional vegetable garden here. It can be done. But there are other ways. So, we're going to go over just the basics of what you need for a survival garden. It's really, you can break it down to trying to do a traditional garden. And that's nice and all. But that's not a survival garden. It's a traditional vegetable garden. It has room in a survival plan, but it's not going to be what keeps you and your family alive. You need to break down what you're doing to basically three things. Can you reproduce it? Calories, and minerals and vitamins. The first thing you need to do is learn the skill to reproduce a high calorie crop, even if it's just one. Down here, those high calorie crops here in Florida would be cassava, sweet potatoes, African yams, bananas, and we have two types of pumpkins that do really well here. The Seminole pumpkin, which is what the Seminole Indians grew, and the calabaza pumpkins, which is what the Indians out in the Caribbean grew. They do very well here. Almost everything else is kinda a side thing. There are some other good calorie crops that you can throw in there, but those ones are the ones that are really stable and really reliable. Papayas, to a lesser extent. They grow very easily. The green papayas are basically a substitute for potatoes, but the right papayas, that's an acquired taste. But we have several pests that go after those, making them less reliable. Now, break it down to calories. Calories that can be stored without refrigeration, without having to can or freeze dry, or any of the more modern things. Don't get me wrong, I love all of that stuff, and I do canning myself. I don't have a freeze dryer. I've never freeze dried anything. But I've dehydrated plenty of things. And I like to dehydrate a lot of things. But you need to think about, what if you don't have power? What can you possibly do to preserve these things? So, having a pumpkin that can sit on the shelf for a year or more and still be viable, that's the way to go. African yams, you dig them in the winter, you got 4 or 5 months before they start to sprout. Sweet potatoes you can store up to a year if you keep them in a cooler, drier place. So those are your calorie crops. You gotta think more along the lines of your vitamins, and that's where you can get into your more traditional vegetables, and they're more like niceties. Things like tomatoes. And for those that think that tomatoes do wonderful in Florida, you're half right. Your tomatoes do not like being hot all the time, and you've got to learn exactly when to plant them, what varieties to use, and how to fertilize them. If you're not going to be able to run to the store and just grab a bag of Miracle Grow or whatever artificial fertilizer you happen to favor, how are you going to feed them? You can do your more traditional summer squashes and things like that. Of course, summer squash isn't grown in the summer here. You can do okra. Okra you can do in the summer. Eggplant you can do in the summer. These are nice. But if you really want to start talking about impact on your vitamins, then you really want to start considering things that a lot of people would never even consider. One, you're going to start wanting to look at what you can forage. Our fruits in the area that you can forage are much more nutritionally packed than a domestic variety. To say, this year here in Florida, we had a really, really good year on muscadines. I have no idea why the muscadines liked this year. They did really good. Those are so much better health-wise for you than the grape that you bought at a store. We have wild blueberries here. Very small. It's a lot of work to actually harvest them. Nutritionally, much higher on the vitamins. And you might want to consider things like moringa. Now, I myself happen to be allergic to moringa, so it's not on my list. But moringa is one of the most nutritious, vitamin-wise plants you can have. Then you can have more perennial things that your average person wouldn't even realize is food. For starters, I have chaya. Now, chaya, not properly cooked, is poisonous, but properly cooked, it has more vitamins than spinach. Higher calcium, higher protein, it's really good for you. So things like that you just have in your garden. Other plants that people wouldn't think about. Hibiscus. Hibiscus is very good for you. It's a lot like a lettuce, but with vitamins. Most lettuce doesn't carry much in the way of vitamins at all. So, hibiscus does really well here. It blooms really well here. People wouldn't even realize that it's something that they can eat because they're not used to seeing it. Those are the things that you need to be able to plant. You need to start planting these type of things now so that they're established when and if you need them. I have cassava. I don't need the cassava, but it's there. I can go out there, I can reproduce that cassava very easily from cuttings and have a couple of hundred cassava in a year. I know it's there, I know I can do it. Is it fast? No. Will it get the job done? Yes. I keep sweet potatoes around. I think I have 3 or 4 different varieties. Sweet potatoes are very easily reproduced from cuttings in a cup of water. Make your slips, you put them in the ground. You can plant them almost year-round in Florida. You really can't in January, February, but pretty much the rest of the year is fair game. And that's kind of a double crop. A lot of people don't know this, but the greens on those are highly nutritious and edible. And most people don't actually know what they look like. They know what the potatoes look like, what a sweet potato looks like. They have no idea what the vines are. There are stories that came out of Poland and other parts of Europe about people growing sweet potatoes where their flower beds were. Since these vines roll around and they have beautiful flowers. They're in the morning glory family. Well, aunties would come in, they'd take all the food and keep on going. You know, armies tend to do that all over the world. They take what they need. They forage off the land by taking from the people. They walk right past the sweet potatoes because, well, it's just a bed of flowers. Having these type of crops just already established and knowing that, okay, I can walk over there and I can take cuttings off of this plant and have 20 of them next month in the ground. Another good example of that would be, and it'd be more or less a vitamin crop, is my Cranberry Hibiscus. Pretty red hibiscus, nice flowers, interesting seed pods. Leaves are edible, taste like cranberries, and are high in vitamin C. So I know I can go over there and I can take a handful of cuttings off of this, stick it in a cup of water, it'll root out, and then I can plant them. That's what survival gardening is. Survival gardening isn't having a bunch of seeds that you don't know what to do with. Your traditional vegetable gardens are wonderful, and I'd encourage you to start learning how to do them. They have their place in being able to do things like this. Teaches you timing. Also teaches you what you need to plant, when you need to plant it. And it becomes very useful. Being able to know exactly what you can have that's already there. Already have these things. And you can reproduce them in quick order and get them going. That's what's going to make the difference if we have a total collapse of society. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's always a possibility. Being prepared for these type of things should be a basic standard of every household. Now, me living in Florida, a basic standard for me is being prepared for hurricanes, which means having water, batteries, flashlights, canned goods to last. They recommend 3 days, but I'm going to tell you from experience, from having a couple of years in a row where we got hit by 2-3 hurricanes inside of 6 weeks. It's kind of important to have about 2 months worth. Dried beans, dried rice, a way to purify water, a bottle of bleach to sterilize things, a bottle of alcohol. You can take these basic concepts and put it into gardening. I know if I need to, I have plants that I can reproduce fast. Get them in the ground. Some of them take a long time, but that's okay. Others aren't as fast, are much faster. Sweet potatoes, no, I might have to wait 4 to 6 months for the sweet potatoes, but I can eat those greens in a couple of weeks. My African yams, I have ones that are just permanently in the ground. Their sole point is to produce seed stock for me from year to year. That's it. That's all they're there for. I know I can go right around January and I can fill up a couple bags of seed stock, create a set, and go plant them. And 9 months down the road, I'm going to be digging up yams that are anywhere between 10 and 40 pounds per yam. So, having that type around. Other things that you should be doing now, if you have your own land, is putting in fruit trees. Fruit trees that are appropriate for your area. This is really important that they're actually for your area. I have peaches, pears, plums, bananas, oranges, lemons, limes, pomegranates in multiple varieties, figs, Asian pears, probably forgetting quite a few. That's not including what I have in pots that I've started that haven't gone into the ground yet. You can choose dwarf or semi-dwarf so you can pack in more, or you can go with standard and just have one big shade tree. I've got 4 types of mulberries. Now, mulberry is not a calorie crop. Mulberry is a vitamin crop. Also happens to produce really early in spring, so we're getting berries really fast. As soon as those trees come out of their dormancy, they're producing mulberries right now. It's really nice to go outside and forage mulberries, blackberries, blueberries. Certain areas of the country, strawberries are perennial. They're not here. Florida kills the heat. Or the heat kills them. They're dead. Come mid-May, they're toast. But planting anything that is perennial in advance. There's a saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Plant them now. They take 4 or 5 years, some 8 to 10 to produce. 20 years from now, your family might need that help. And because you thought ahead, it's there. Now, every generation needs to think about what they need to do for not just now, but for the future. Now, we're going through some hard times. This country has got some serious problems, and so does the world. So, every single person that has the ability to start putting in systems now, they might be needed, should be doing so. Hope you found this interesting. Yeah, have a great day.